Sentire Media.
Welcome to the Stop Italian Sounding podcast, uncovering authentic Italian food. I'm your host, Robert Campana, and join me as we delve into the rich heritage of genuine Italian food, exploring its legends, history, and traditions. Through important tips and insightful interviews with industry professionals, you'll gain a deeper understanding of authentic Italian food. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stop Italian Sounding show, uncovering authentic Italian food. So, did you know that Parmesan cheese is not Italian? Yes, I'll say it again. Parmesan is not an Italian cheese. So let me explain so you're not duped the next time you want Parmesan. Parmigiano Reggiano. So we all like pasta, and many times we like to add grated cheese. We're so used to saying pasta Parmesan. So what is Parmesan? Well, for starters, in the United States, it's a hard cheese that usually has a nice Italian flag on the packaging when you buy it in the supermarkets, but it has nothing to do with the actual Italian product. Parmesan is actually the English translation for Parmigiano, literally meaning from Parma. In fact, the cheese Parmesan is an imitation of the original cheese from Italy called Parmigiano Reggiano. But aren't they synonymous? After all, we are speaking English, aren't we? You may say. Well, yes, we are speaking English, but in the United States, Parmesan is not at all synonymous with Parmigiano Reggiano. Parmigiano Reggiano is a cheese that is perhaps the most imitated in the entire world, especially here in the US. But wait, you can't counterfeit food. Oh, but you can. And people absolutely do engage in agri-piracy, unfortunately. Real Parmigiano Reggiano could only be produced in Italy, specifically in the areas of the northern Italian region of Emilia-Romagna. These areas are Reggio Emilia, Parma, Modena, Bologna to the left of the Reno River, and Mantova to the right of the Po River. And the reason is due to history, tradition, territory, and know-how. But how is it different than Parmesan, you ask? Well, I'll get to that. But first, I want to briefly talk about the history of Parmigiano Reggiano. So, it's a cheese that dates back about 1,000 years. In the Middle Ages, monks were committed to finding a cheese that could last long, and they were actually the first producers, using the salt from the Salsa Maggiore salt mines and the milk of the cows bred in the farms belonging to the monasteries in those areas. The monks obtained a dry paste cheese in large wheels suitable for long preservation. Believe it or not, the first evidence of the sale of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese dates back to about the 1200s. A notarial deed drawn up in Genoa in 1254 is evidence of the fact that the Caseus Parmensis, the cheese from Parma, was already known in a city that was far from its production area. And in the 14th century, trade developed as far as the Romagna, Piedmont, and Tuscany regions, also reaching to the ports of the Mediterranean Sea. So, Parmigiano Reggiano has a history that dates back almost a millennium. And like I mentioned before, it could only be produced in the area of Reggio Emilia, Parma, Modena, Bologna to the left of the Reno River, and Mantova to the right of the Po River, due to its history like I just recounted. This cheese is so linked to its territory that the cows that produce the milk for the cheese can only graze in those specific areas, eat local feed, and then produce local milk, which will then, yes, have an impact on the final taste of the cheese. So yes, terroir plays a huge role in cheese production. In fact, Parmigiano Reggiano has to age in warehouses, of course, only in these areas, for a minimum of 12 months. However, most of what you'll find in the store will be Parmigiano Reggiano aged longer. So, I go back to my previous question. How is Parmigiano Reggiano different from Parmesan? Well, for starters, like we said before, the word Parmesan is a direct English translation of the Italian word Parmigiano. However, it is a word that is considered to be of common use, quote unquote, in the US, and therefore could not be protected in terms of intellectual property. Parmigiano Reggiano, on the other hand, could only be used if it's referring to the real deal. Furthermore, Italian-sounding Parmesan could be produced anywhere using different know-how, non-Italian ingredients coming from virtually anywhere in the world, and therefore having a totally different taste. There's no strict regulation with Italian-sounding Parmesan, whereas there is an extremely strict regulation with the real Parmigiano Reggiano, such as the areas in which it could be legally produced, the traceability of its raw materials, and the centuries-old know-how. So, how do you know if you're getting the real, authentic Parmigiano Reggiano? Well, if you buy a wedge, take a look at the rind and you'll see the pin dots that spell out Parmigiano Reggiano. This is the easiest thing to look for, and you could be certain that you're getting the real deal. The Parmesan imitations will not have that. Also, real Parmigiano Reggiano will always have its official name, Parmigiano Reggiano. It will never be referred to as Parmesan, neither on the packaging nor in speech. However, I should say that in the European Union, Parmigiano Reggiano was able to win a lawsuit and therefore has the exclusive rights to the usage of the word Parmesan. But again, that's only in the European Union. But back here in the United States, that's not the case, unfortunately. Another thing to look for when looking for the real Parmigiano Reggiano is the official red and yellow PDO seal, or DOP in Italian. This seal ensures that you're getting the real Parmigiano Reggiano. This seal will be present not only on the chunks of Parmigiano Reggiano, I should say the packaging of the chunks of Parmigiano Reggiano, but also on purely grated Parmigiano Reggiano with nothing, of course, added to it. Anyway, we have to be more careful when we want to talk about the real cheese and should not confuse the Italian Parmigiano Reggiano, so the real Parmigiano Reggiano, with Italian-sounding Parmesan. Words matter, of course, and in my opinion, we have to be more cognizant in our speech. It's not just a matter of differentiating what is real and what's not. It's a matter of principle. Does it make sense to consider Parmesan Italian just because it has an Italian flag on the packaging? No, of course it doesn't. Italian elements are added to the packaging to induce the consumer to erroneously associate it with the real deal. And if someone isn't aware, they may actually fall for it. I go back to my original analogy that makes so much sense, at least in my brain. If I create a car, paint it red, and put a logo of a horse on it and call it a Ferrari, is it a Ferrari? Of course not. And the same goes for certain food products. So, as we wrap up today's episode, I want you to remember the key points. Parmigiano Reggiano is the real Italian cheese that has nothing to do with Parmesan. Real Parmigiano Reggiano will always have the dotted rind and will always have the red and yellow PDO logo. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the stories of authentic Italian cuisine. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more insights and interviews. Also, feel free to reach out with your thoughts or questions on our social media channels at Stop Italian Sounding or on our website stopitasounding.com. Grazie a tutti e alla prossima.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.
Sentire Media.